Hi gang, we're back with Cranking Out Crafts, and today I'm going to show you how to do a tide pool ring. We're going to create this little bubble of tide pool with UV resin and shells and of course a little bit of bling. But first we're going to do the actual ring portion. So what we're going to do is take some 14 gauge silver filled wire, and I'm going to use my nylon jaw pliers to just straighten it out a bit. I'm working with dead soft wire so that I can have an easier time forming my wire. This is really thick. And I'm going to take about 4 inches of wire. Trim one side so that it's flush, and flush out the other side as well. Now I'm going to take my bench block and my chasing hammer, and I'm going to hammer down the end. So that the tip is nice and flat and it kind of spreads out. It's going to look like a little paddle. Now I'm going to take my 6-step bail making pliers, and using the smallest step I'm going to curl up the end just until it kind of touches. Oop, a little bit more. Because it's a ring, I don't want it to catch on anything, so I want to try and get that piece to be as close as possible. Now I'm going to take the largest step on one side of the jaw. This is actually the second largest step if you're counting all 6. And I'm just going to make a simple J hook. Nice and easy, just like that. Now because I want my J hook to keep its form well, I'm going to hammer the curve down. And just close it down again, because when I hammered it, it kind of opened up the curve. Okay, now I'm going to use the wrap and tap, and I'm going to use the wrap and tap to kind of form the ring itself. So I'm just holding it in the jaws and wrapping the rest of the wire around. Now I can make it a little bit smaller if I want to. And then I'm just going to place it onto our ring mandrel to figure out the size. So I want this to be about a 7.5. And I'm just going to hammer it down a little bit to kind of work hard in it a little bit more so that it keeps its shape better. And I'm pretty happy with that. So since I'm happy with the shape and the size, I'm going to use the very corner of my bench block to hammer down this end flat. Now I'm hammering this part down flat because I plan to resin on the jewel at the end. So if you have a nice flat piece, that gives it a little bit more for the resin to work with. Now I have a bunch of pre-made forms, plus the one that I just made. I showed you guys how to do this. And I'm going to throw it into our rock and jewelry tumbler to kind of tumble it up and polish it up. Okay, so this is the canister that comes with our rock and jewelry tumbler. We just twist this part off. Now when you use this at home, this little knob has a serrated topper. So keep that serrated part towards the top so that you have something to grip onto when you put it on or remove it. There's this little washer here, and you can use this to help pry off the lid. So I like to squeeze this a bit to loosen this up, and as you can see, I have all this buckshot in here. Now whenever I'm going to put anything in to tumble, just a drop or two of Dawn dishwashing liquid and regular tap water. Not too much, I'm just filling it up until it meets the buckshot. And then I'm just going to throw everything in, just like that. That's great. So we're going to put this back on. Then the cover. Make sure to keep the washer on the outside of the cover so that later on you can pry this open. Otherwise you might have a bit of a hard time. And we're just gonna lock this down, and you just twist until you can't twist anymore, until it's nice and tight. Then we're gonna set it up in the rock and jewelry tumbler itself. There's a little notch over here that you line up your handle with, I guess, this little knobby thing. So as you can see, it doesn't make that much noise, and you can just leave this to run for maybe about 5-10 minutes until we're done. So while this is running, we're going to do the jewel portion of the tide pool ring. Okay, so now we're ready to make the gem portion of our tide pool ring, and I'm using a silicone mold from our L Bell section. I'm going to put a little bit of our UV resin on the bottom, so just a little drop, and I'm going to use a toothpick to just coat the edges. Now I want to make a really thin layer of this clear resin in order to keep more room available for the shells that I'm going to be putting in here. One of the great things about working in a craft store is we get a lot of feedback from our customers, and while there are other UV resins out there on the market, I'm being told constantly that our L Bell UV resin seems to work the best as far as curing and being nice and clear. So that's really nice to hear. So I'm just going to put this into the UV light for about 10 seconds to set, and then we're ready to move on to our next portion. Now while we're waiting for that to set, I've got several small little shells here on the side, and we're just going to go through that. Now if you're using shells, whether it's been store-bought or from the ocean, you want to make sure to rinse those shells out quite a few times. Otherwise you might end up, when you pour in your resin on top of these shells, you might end up with a slightly hazy look to your resin. Okay, so I'm ready to take this out. Another thing I want to bring up is that I'm not really going to be worrying about bubbles, because it kind of ties in with the theme. I've got several little charms here that we also sell at our L Bell section that are nautical themed. So I have a little starfish, I've got an anchor, I've got what looks like a mollusk shell or a clam shell similar to our sunrise shells in Hawaii. So I'm going to put a little bit more resin on the bottom. And first we'll go in with the charm. And then I'm just going to take some of the shells and place that in. Now, the other part to remember is you're working from the bottom up. So when you pop this out, what was facing the bottom is going to be visible. So that means I'm going to turn my shell over. So if I want this pattern to show up, I'm going to place it face down in my mold. And I'm just going to add in a few other small shells to that just to fill up the space. And I want to try and keep all of this below the edge of the mold to prevent an overlap. And now I'm ready to just fill that up. Now keep in mind some of the resin is going to go into the crevices of the shell. So we can just move it around a little bit. And now I'm ready to put this into the light again. So because this is like the second layer, I'm going to be leaving it in the UV lamp for maybe about half a minute or so. And while that is setting, I've got some sand here. Now this is sand that we sell at the store. It's actually a mixture of two colors, one that's very light and then one that's slightly tanned. I thought the mixture gives a really nice realistic effect to the end result. Now you don't want to put resin in with the sand and leave it on the side, because the resin will darken the sand up as you're waiting. So once your mold is done, once this has hardened enough, another very thin layer on top, and then we're just going to sprinkle a little bit of the sand on top of that. See how I'm using a really thin layer of this in order to keep the backing down. We want to have hopefully a nice flat bottom for this. And I'm just going to sprinkle. Oh, thank you. I'm just going to place this on some cardstock, and that way I can just sprinkle a little bit of the sand in there. Place it back onto my working platform and back into the light. So we're going to leave that in the light for about 20 seconds. And once that's set, another layer of resin. So just a small drop. And I'm just going to spread that around to the edges. And this will help keep all that sand in position. And then it goes back into the light for about half a minute again. Now, once this is set, we're going to pop it out. And you can kind of see the effect already, like it's a little tide pool, and I have my little anchor right there. Now you can put this into the light again for about maybe another 10 seconds just to make sure everything is nice and cured. So while we're waiting for that, I'm going to show you these files that we carry at our bead stores. It's a 3-piece set with diamond encrusted magic on it. I don't know what it's called, diamond encrusted bits. And we're going to use this to just file down the edges so that they're nice and smooth. This will give it a better end result, not only to make it comfortable, but it'll look nicer as well. Okay, and now I'm going to add a little bit of bling. Now you can finish it off just like that and attach it to your ring base already, but I want to add a little jewel. So these are pointed bottom rhinestones that we sell in L-Bell. We carry it in a few different colors, and I didn't really want to set it in to the resin and encase it. I wanted it protruding from. So I'm going to pick a spot, and I'm going to use this hand drill, again something that we sell in the L-Bell section, and as I'm just going to drill a little hole. Look how easy that is. It's just drilling right into my resin with no problem. I don't have to use like a lot of force for it. And now I'm just going to set a little bit of resin on the side. Whoops, a little bit too much. I'm going to take a toothpick and fill in that little spot that I drilled into, and then I'm going to pick up the rhinestone and set it in position. So the point of the rhinestone gets set into the crevice that I made, and I have enough resin in there that it kind of protrudes out a bit along the edges. I actually wanted a little bit more, so I'm just going to take the tip of my toothpick and get a little bit more in there. And now it goes back into the UV light to set. So it only takes a few seconds for the resin to set the rhinestone in place, but while it's in there, and I don't have to worry about leaving it in there too long because it's not going to catch on fire or ruin my work by keeping it into the light too long. But I wanted to show you we're done with tumbling our ring bases. So I'm going to take this apart. And we're going to pop this open. When this comes off, it's going to be filled with, see all that foam in there? So you're just going to fish out your pieces and run it under the faucet for a few minutes to get all of that extra soap off. I'm hoping you can see the difference that it made in the tumbler because it's just so much shinier than before. I mean, it was all right before we went in, but after the tumble, it's just a lot shinier and prettier. And this is a great way to also clean your jewelry, as long as it's not delicate stones or anything on your pieces of jewelry. You can throw like your rings in there to clean it up and get the tarnish off. So now we're ready to attach our jewel to the ring base. And I'm going to be using Uhu tack. We sell this at our stores, and it's a really easy way. It's kind of like a repositionable putty. So I'm going to put a little bit down on one side, and then I'm going to have a bigger piece right next to it. Very easy to manipulate and form. So I want my jewel to kind of be set just like so. So I'm placing the jewel on the smaller piece, and I'm resting the ring base on the larger piece, and I'm just going to press it down until it's almost touching. Then a little bit of resin. Press it in. And a little bit more on top. And now I'm going to set it into the light for about half a minute. And now, why do I have this piece of cardstock, reused, grubby looking cardstock on top of my lamp? Is to just keep the light in there so that I don't fatigue my eyes. And also, if I'm doing more resin work nearby, the light isn't hitting my new pieces and starting to make my resin harder. So we've had the ring in there for about 60 seconds, half a minute or 60 seconds, and it's pretty much set. I can remove it from the Uhu tack. Look how easy that peels off. And it is set and ready to go. Now we are going to be having these as workshops for El Bell, where you're going to create the jeweled portion, and we'll have the ring base ready made for you. Or if you want to join our progressive beading program and learn how to work with wire on your own with a variety of different tools that we'll teach you how to use, you can do that as well. So just give us a call at our Mapunapuna bead shop. Otherwise, this little ring is ready to go onto a mermaid's hand.